Welcome back to the deep dive. So, if you've been feeling that, that familiar New Year's pressure, that big push to finally get your finances sorted out, to find a structure that actually sticks, well, you are not alone. That whole fresh start feeling, it often comes with the burden of figuring out, where to even start.
And that's exactly why this source material you brought in today is so valuable. It's called Benny's Blizzard Budget,
Right,
the three-jar wisdom.
right.
It's a story about these anthropomorphic animals
Mm.
managing their frosty tokens. And it sounds simple, I know, but it contains this really foundational executable strategy.
It really does. So our mission today is to kind of move past the cute story and just extract the pure financial architecture. We're going to unpack Benny the Bee's core three-part strategy, which he actually visualizes as a glowing triangle.
Hmm.
And maybe most importantly, we're going to analyze the crucial lesson on flexibility and financial recovery that the friends learn when a literal snowstorm hits their business.
Yeah, we're pulling out a clear, adaptable money management structure. I mean, this strategy, it's really an elegant lesson in what we'd call mental accounting.
Okay.
It addresses that common financial paralysis people face by offering immediate, super easy to understand rules for division. So whether you're dealing with a $50,000 salary or, a handful of frosty tokens, the structure gives you the clarity you need to handle goals and emergencies.
Okay, let's unpack this core framework. So the wisdom is delivered by Benny Bonaventure Bright. He's our enthusiastic bee in Iberville the Icicle.
Right.
And Iberville is described as tall, cool, and pretty classy in his blue polka-dotted bow tie.
Yeah.
They're kind of the perfect hosts for this lesson. One is all energy, and the other is pure, steady structure.
It's the perfect balance, really. Motivation and execution all in one.
And the need for all this wisdom comes from Peter the Penguin and Snickers the Snow Hare. Peter and Snickers, they have a very real, very immediate problem. Their skates are worn out and they don't have the funds, the frosty tokens, to get into the big race they've been looking forward to. They have a goal, but, well, no capital.
And this is the reality for most people, right? There's a gap between what you want and the resources you currently have. The solution, Benny insists, is to be money-wise.
And he does that by drawing this glowing three-part triangle in the snow.
Exactly.
He immediately defines the three key areas, and Iberville, who fits that stable nature of his, points to the top corner and says, one part goes to Sevi for later. This feels like the easiest concept to grasp, maybe, but the hardest to actually do.
It is. It's the foundation. It represents capital preservation.
Yeah.
I mean, in real-world terms, Savvy is your emergency fund, your retirement accounts, or, those long-term sinking funds for a house or something. It has to be separate or it just gets spent.
Then Benny taps the next corner and names it Live VF for what you need today. But here, and this is the first deep nuance in the text, it's something a lot of modern budgeting advice misses. Benny clarifies, and the live part also includes the give part, because if you like to help others, then it's part of living.
And what's so fascinating there is that shift in definition. By intentionally putting charitable giving, that give component, inside the non-discretionary essential bucket, Live EV, they completely reframe the expense.
How so?
Well, giving isn't a luxury you get to after all your other needs and wants are met. It becomes a necessary function of a well-rounded life. You're actually budgeting for your emotional and social fulfillment, making it a critical expense, just like, rent or food.
I wonder, though, doesn't that put a little too much pressure on the live jar? I mean, if you're really struggling to pay for essentials, does Benny's wisdom hold up when it's forcing you to allocate scarce funds to give?
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
But I think if we interpret give not just as money, but as a broader commitment to community, which the story really supports later on, it ensures the plan is never purely selfish. It actually promotes the sustainability of their social network.
Which becomes their safety net.
Exactly, which, as we'll see, becomes their safety net.
Right. Okay, so finally, Benny taps that last corner, and one part goes to FUN because life needs lots and lots of FUN. And you can see Peter and Snickers just immediately cheer up.
Well, that's the principle of sustainability in behavioral finance, right?
Mhm.
If you deny yourself all joy to fill up that FE jar, the system will break. You'll just give up. The FUN jar is basically a sinking fund for joy.
A sinking fund for joy, I like that.
Yeah, it gives you structured, guilt-free permission to spend on yourself, which ensures you actually stick with the whole plan.
So we've got the structure. Now let's see how it holds up when they actually introduce work and income. So to earn their tokens, they launched the Blizzard Cocoa Stand.
Right. This is the application phase. The theory is easy, but converting your labor into segregated capital, that's where the discipline gets tested.
And we get these great little details about the division of labor. Peter poured the cocoa. Snickers, being agile, zipped around delivering the mugs. Iberville,
Of course.
he cooled the cups just right. And Benny was the promoter, buzzing around, being the cheerleader.
They're leveraging their individual strengths. And what's crucial here is that their income is variable, right? The tokens came in quick, in lump sums, after a burst of effort. And that's often the hardest kind of income for people to budget.
Exactly. So when that Frosty Tokens jar was full, the immediate disciplined action they took was absolutely key. They poured the tokens out, and just as Benny taught, they split them into 3 piles. Not, we'll spend a bit and then divide the rest, but instant division.
No hesitation.
Save, live, fun, 1, 2, 3. Simple as that.
And it's just a perfect example of what you'd call a pre-commitment strategy. By having the structure already defined and then applying it the second the money arrives, they just sidestep the temptation to impulse spend. The structure eliminates that moment of weakness. The goal wasn't just to earn the money, it was to process it correctly.
But as we know, the best lessons come when a plan meets friction. And this is where it gets really interesting, because the market conditions, they take a turn. Enter the critical test, the sudden snowstorm.
The inevitable emergency. A
Yeah.
financial plan that can't survive the unexpected is, well, it's a flawed plan.
Right. And the scene is dramatic. A sudden, powerful whoosh. This huge gust of wind flies through Honeydrop Hills and just flips the cocoa stand right over. Cups roll, cocoa spills everywhere.
Total chaos.
And the text even makes a point of saying that Iberville, the unflappable one, he wobbled, which really underlines the scale of it all.
Yeah, and this is your pure emergency fund scenario. They have an immediate critical need to keep their business running. They need restock capital now. Peter yells, "Oh no, we need more cocoa mix to open back up." This expense is an urgent necessity. It falls straight into the live category.
So Benny checks the jars, and the division they made comes back to haunt them, or maybe to teach them. Savvy was fine, fun was full, but LVE, the jar for current necessities, was empty. Maybe they paid for initial supplies or already did some giving.
And this raises that critical question of liquidity. They have capital, but it's siloed. The money's in the wrong mental account for this specific crisis. A lot of people in that panic would just immediately raid the Savvy jar. It's the biggest one.
And that is precisely the decision Benny rejects. This is the ultimate wisdom in the text. He acknowledges the chaos. Sometimes life throws us a little snowstorm, but instead of collapsing the entire structure, he makes a surgical pivot. He says, we'll borrow a tiny bit from FUN and refill it later.
That decision is so profoundly important. Why raid FUN, the joy bucket, instead of Savvy, the security bucket? Because raiding Savvy immediately undermines the entire long-term integrity of their financial plan.
Yeah.
You're breaking the promise you made to your future self.
But borrowing from FUN, which is discretionary by its very nature, is less psychologically damaging. You're sacrificing immediate joy for immediate necessity, and you create an instant measurable goal, paying back the FUN jar.
Precisely. Benny is protecting the sanctity of the long-term goal while using the most disposable, most liquid source to fix a temporary problem. He says it perfectly. That's what being money-wise really looks like. A steady plan that has the capacity for flexible adaptation built right in.
And Iberville, the steady icicle, he backs this up perfectly. A steady plan keeps you steady, too. The lesson isn't just about dividing money. It's about managing the emotional panic that comes with a financial setback.
And if you connect this to the bigger picture, the crisis teaches us that a budget has to be a living document, not some rigid prison. But, and this is key, the commitment to repay the FUN jar is non-negotiable. That commitment prevents this from becoming a bad habit of just borrowing from yourself all the time.
They pass the test. And this leads us to the resolution, which just so beautifully circles back to the community and that give aspect we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. Because they had already made giving part of their living costs. The community was ready to provide the support they needed. That give bucket actually functions as a kind of indirect insurance policy.
Their neighbors start showing up in the snow. Owls with cinnamon sticks, foxes with more cocoa mix, a moose brings mittens. The community response is just overwhelming. They weren't saved by a big loan, they were saved by their network.
A reciprocal relationship. It was established through their own earlier generosity. The stand gets back up, the frosting tokens jar starts filling again, and critically, the very first tokens they earn go straight to repaying the FUN jar.
The structural integrity was restored. The tokens are being divided in 3s again, proving the process works, even after a setback, after borrowing, after repayment.
Yeah, that repayment step is the final essential piece of discipline. They respected their own plan. They treated their FUN money with the same seriousness they would a debt to a bank.
And the reward for all of it, the planning, the storm, the discipline, is immediate joy. Peter and Snickers finally get their new skates, they tighten their laces, and they get to race under the magnificent northern lights.
The structure provided the means to the outcome they wanted. The process delivered the reward.
But the financial wisdom doesn't actually stop there with just achieving the personal goal. After the race, Peter makes one last, really profound decision. He says, let's use our FUN money to buy cocoa for everyone. He took his allocated joy and he turned it into shared joy.
And Benny's final words just summarize the whole philosophy. Now, that's being money-wise, enjoying what you have and having FUN. I mean, that synthesis is beautiful because it merges all three jars.
So to summarize the full cycle for you listening, it's earning income, planning its division immediately, weathering a crisis by borrowing from the most discretionary bucket, FUN, rigorously repaying that internal loan, and then finally using the FUN allocation for joy, but finding the deepest satisfaction when that joy is amplified through community giving.
Yeah.
That final visual of the northern lights glowing in 3 colors, save, live, FUN, is just such a memorable takeaway.
It really is. It solidifies that connection between financial clarity and emotional fulfillment. It shows that the money system itself should support your values, not contradict them.
And that brings us to the end of this deep dive into Benny's 3-jar wisdom. The soft final mantra Benny shares for you is something so easy to remember. Save some, live, give some, and keep some just for fun. It's a simple, effective blueprint.
And that interconnectedness is what we want to leave you with. We saw that the live jar includes giving, and then we saw Peter intentionally use the FUN jar to provide giving to amplify the joy for everyone.
It's a fascinating crossover of financial allocation, isn't it?
So consider this. If the purpose of the FUN jar is to provide joy, and the live jar mandates giving, what happens when you proactively use your FUN allocation, not just for your own enjoyment, but to amplify the joy of others, like Peter did? How does that act of sharing financially change the fundamental emotional and practical value of the FUN portion of your budget? Is the highest yield of the FUN jar found in spending it for yourself or in sharing it?
That's a great thought to chew on. Financial wisdom doesn't always come from complicated spreadsheets. Sometimes it comes from the wisdom of a bee and an icicle.
Indeed.
Until next time, keep shining your light.